I'm back with this 2021 Tesla Model 3, and today I'm going to be talking about Tesla's peeling steering wheel issue. Now this video is going to be quite a bit different than my others because it's going to be a lot of storytelling. If you're not into the whole story and you just want to hear the outcome, then I'll put links in the description to all the timestamps in this video of everything I covered. I don't want to waste anybody's time, so let's get into it. So about 2.5 years after I bought the car, I noticed that there was like this 3-inch bubble that appeared on the bottom of my steering wheel. I thought it was strange. I don't even really hold it there. I'm not quite sure how it showed up there, but I figured the car is still under warranty. It had about 40,000 miles on it at the time. So I reached out to Tesla and said, hey, can you fix this? And they said, absolutely. Here's a date. You can come on in and here's your invoice. Now, I looked at the invoice and it was for $919.30. And so clearly this is something that should be covered under warranty. And so I said, is this covered? And they said that this was normal wear and tear. Now, for those that aren't familiar with automotive jargon, normal wear and tear would be things like wiper blades or brake pads, tires, maybe some paint chips in front of your car, scratches, scuffs on seats or wrinkles on seats. A steering wheel should never have this kind of a defect on it. This is clearly something that would be considered a materials defect. And so I did a little bit of digging and I found a whole bunch of other people that were having similar issues. And so I just replied to Tesla and said, hey, listen, like clearly this is something that's happening to other people. Can you please help me? And they kind of pulled that meme, like Tesla has left the chat. They straight up closed the conversation. So I couldn't even reply again if I wanted to. I'd have to like open up another ticket. Now this might not look that bad right now, and I agree it's not that big of a deal, but I found some really gnarly pictures online of some of these steering wheels that are just falling apart. And so I know that this is just how it starts. Once I have a little bubble, this is going to get way worse in the coming years. So I really wanted to get ahead of it. And so I'm not really willing to accept their rejection that easy. And so I started reading through the warranty paperwork that came with the car. And Tesla says that if there's any dispute or controversy between me and Tesla over the warranty documentation, then they have free dispute resolution services through NCDS, which is an arbitration company. And so you can just go to NCDS's website, you can see how to apply. They've got a whole form you can fill out, and they ask that you submit evidence. And so the evidence that I have is obviously some pictures here. But as I was doing a little bit more digging, I found tons and tons of other people who have had this issue. And I found not one, but 2 service bulletins that Tesla themselves have issued. One of them is for the Model 3 and the Model Y, and it's about the sides of the steering wheel here. It just feels like it's separated from the solid piece behind it. So there's like a bubble here. But the other service bulletin is for the Model S and the Model X, which has an issue that's more similar to mine, where this material is just delaminating from itself. Now, this issue, from what I can tell, is new to Tesla's vegan leather. And as far as I can tell, this applies to every car in Tesla's lineup now that uses vegan leather. I found picture after picture after picture after picture of all of these steering wheels that are just destroyed. Just absolutely ridiculous how much these things are just falling apart. And so I submitted a couple pictures of my steering wheel. I submitted both service bulletins and like half a dozen pictures of other steering wheels that I found online as evidence, and waited for my hearing. Now, Tesla also has the right to reply to what I've submitted, and they did. And what they said I thought was pretty remarkable, honestly. And I feel a little bit like I'm embracing my inner Louis Rossmann here, because let me read this to you. Just as Tesla vehicles are energy efficient, Tesla as a company must be efficient. A part of efficiency means not just to throw parts at vehicles. It is in the interest of both Tesla and Tesla customers to work together when undergoing service or repair. Now, I didn't ask them to throw a part at anything. I would be totally content if one of their service people wanted to fix this bubble. Like, clearly it just came unglued. If they want to repair my steering wheel, that would be fine. I didn't ask them to replace the whole wheel. I asked them to repair this bubble. And then they went on to say that my concern aligned with normal wear and tear, which encompasses various forms of wear, not limited to abrasions, wrinkles, deformation, etc. Now, a wrinkle is normal in a seat. It's not normal in a steering wheel. You wouldn't be okay with a wrinkle in your screen either. This is not a spot that you would expect to see a wrinkle. Now, some people online were saying that your hearing and the results of your arbitration are confidential and that you're not allowed to share those. But from what I could tell, the hearings are by law required to be open. Therefore, you can share it with anybody that you want. They're open proceedings. And regarding the outcome, there was a lady at NCDS that was assigned to me, and I asked her point blank, is this confidential? And she said, no, it's not confidential. It took about a month between the time that I filed for arbitration and when I got my result. I have the result here, and there were 3 judges. Now, when I say judges, they're actually just arbitrators. They're not like legal judges. They're just people that are hired by NCDS, and they go through some training. It says, after reviewing the complaints and hearing the proofs and arguments of the parties and taking into consideration, blah, 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 the customer's request for repair is hereby denied. We have reached this unanimous conclusion because the customer failed to prove the existence of a manufacturing defect. It's really kind of remarkable that people can come to that kind of conclusion. Now, these are supposed to be independent people. Now, I recognize that they're kind of incentivized to side with Tesla because they're the ones that are paying them, and why would you bite the hand that feeds you? Now, that being said, the warranty that I have is supposed to cover the repair or replacement necessary to correct defects in the materials or workmanship of any parts manufactured or supplied by Tesla. I can't think of a better example of a defect in materials than this. If this isn't a defect in materials, then what would count as a defect in materials? So I did a bit more research online to see if I had any options left, and all I could find was post after post saying that I have 30 days to opt out of their arbitration provision. Otherwise, I'm bound by it, and that's that. But to be thorough, I decided I wanted to read the warranty documentation for myself, and it's wildly confusing to a point of being contradictory. Listen to this. So it says, any dispute is subject to binding arbitration. But what we went through was non-binding arbitration, which is binding to Tesla, just not to me. And it says all disputes not resolved by non-binding arbitration, which we already went through, will be arbitrated under the terms of the agreement to arbitrate in your vehicle order agreement. Now, under that agreement, I agreed to resolve disputes by arbitration rather than by litigation in court. And you agree that any dispute will not be decided by a judge or jury. So that kind of seems like we can't go to small claims court. Instead, it will be arbitrated by a single arbitrator in an arbitration administered by American Arbitration Association, not NCDS that we went through. But it also says that if you prefer, you can take the dispute to small claims court, where it presumably would be decided by a judge. And get this, if you prefer not to submit your dispute to non-binding arbitration, then you can proceed directly to binding arbitration or small claims court. Now, any of these arbitration companies I would caution against because, again, I feel like they have a conflict of interest, like they are incentivized to side with Tesla since Tesla's the one that's paying their bills. From what I can tell, what this means is that I can't join a class action lawsuit. I can't sue for anything beyond small claims, but it says in black and white that I can go to small claims court. So let's figure that out. So for this next section, I just want to preface with the fact that I am not a lawyer. I've never even been inside of a courtroom before. All I'm intending to do with this video is share my story. And I'm hoping if you've had a similar experience that you'd be willing to leave a comment so that the next person who hasn't been through this can look at my experiences and your experiences and see if we can get to the best conclusion for everybody. And so what I did is I just went to the library and I found a book on how to take people to small claims court and read through that. Basically, it just said to go to your local courthouse or go online, fill out a form, and now you have a court date. And so that's what I did. I went to my local courthouse's website, downloaded a PDF, filled it out as best I could, and right away I was kind of stuck because it said first name, last name, and I didn't really know how to fill that out. What's Tesla's last name, for example? And so I did a bit more research, and it sounds like every corporation has what they call a registered agent in each state. So in New York State, the registered agent is CT Corporation. Tesla at the time had a website dedicated to essentially showing people how to serve them in court. It just had a list of all of their registered agents. Now at the time of filming this video, they do still have a link on their legal website, but it links to a third-party website. But that third-party website does seem to have every registered agent for every state in the United States. I filled that out with the address and brought the paperwork to my local courthouse, and immediately I ran into my first issue because the person across the desk from me said, "Hey, this address is New York City. You can't sue somebody in New York City in your local courthouse. You'd have to go to the court in which they live, essentially." And so then I was like, well, that's all the way in New York City. You're saying I have to go to New York City? And she said, yes, that's exactly what she's saying. Now, those that aren't aware of how big the United States is, I live in New York State, but New York City is a 6-hour drive from me each way. So for me to go all the way to New York City is kind of insane, unreasonable maybe. But at the time, I was taking time off of work, and it seemed like kind of an adventure to me. And so I went to New York City's website, and New York City, their forms are all different. When I filled out their form, again, it's the same thing, first, last name. I can kind of figure that out at this point. And they had nothing but a checkbox for warranty. They didn't care what kind of warranty. They didn't really care what it was even about. I just checked the box that said warranty, put it in the mailbox with a $15 money order. Can't be a check, has to be a money order. And then waited. I waited about a month and a half and finally got a letter in the mail from New York City, and I had a court date, which is kind of daunting because I've never been inside a courtroom in my life, but I started to put together what I was going to talk about. Now, Tesla also around that time, I assume, got the same letter in the mail. Of course, theirs is going to be mailed to their registered agent, who then relays it to Tesla. And a little less than a month after I got my court date, Tesla called me. Now, Tesla said, hey, sorry, we just got your thing in the mail. Said you're taking us to court. Would you mind sending us a couple pictures of whatever your issue is? And I was like, I already sent you those pictures. What do you mean? And they said, oh, well, sorry, yeah, if you could just send them again, we'd like to review them, we could go through them. And so I was very careful and sent the exact same 2 photos that I included in my original warranty request. I didn't want there to be any concept of, hey, well, these pictures, it shows the issue's a little bit worse than we thought it was. I didn't want it to be anything like that. So I sent the exact same 2 photos. And then Tesla said, oh, we're sorry, Mr. Davenport. We should have taken care of this. We're sorry we had such a hard time. We've scheduled a service appointment. You can come in, you can drop your car off. We'll get a new steering wheel on there. We'll get it all taken care of for you. So we finally got Tesla to do what we originally asked for and fix our steering wheel. But now that I've done all this research, I'm realizing that even if they put a new steering wheel on there, what's it going to buy me? Another 2.5 years? I'm not interested. And so I replied and said essentially that. I said, hey, listen, like, if I get a new steering wheel on here, I don't have any confidence that this is going to last any longer than the first one. I found dozens of photos online now of these steering wheels just falling apart, and I don't have any confidence that you are capable of making a steering wheel that's not going to fall apart. And so I just want the original amount that I asked for, which is the $919.30 plus a $15 court filing fee. Cut me that check, I'll drop the suit, we'll settle it, everything will be all taken care of. And they said, at this point, we've offered to replace your steering wheel, there's nothing more we can do. And so this is great. I decided I'm just going to stick with it. I'm going to let a judge decide, because the judge is a genuine third party who doesn't have that conflict of interest that an arbitrator would, because the judge is getting paid either way. They're not getting paid by Tesla, they're not getting paid by me, they're being paid by tax dollars. And so at this point, I had a few months to prepare for my court date, and I put together this entire pamphlet full of all of my evidence. I have a timeline of events, the original photos that I submitted to Tesla, the relevant section of their warranty document where they said that they would take care of manufacturing defects, the original warranty request, screenshots of my conversation with Tesla and them saying that it was normal wear and tear. Not one, but two service bulletins that Tesla issued about this very issue. 42 images of other people showing that this steering wheel is falling apart and that this is a systemic issue. I included Tesla's response to the arbitration, saying that we need to work together in this kumbaya sort of thing. I included the arbitration decision saying that this is normal wear and tear. I included the settlement attempt between Tesla and I, where they offered to replace the steering wheel and I said, hey, your steering wheels suck, I don't want it. I included a parts list showing the price of a new steering wheel. I included a receipt from my court filing fee. I included a quote from an independent repair place to reupholster my steering wheel with genuine leather. And I included a first page of a Google result showing that this is a widespread issue, indicating that this is likely a materials defect issue. One of the things that I thought would help make my case to the judge that this is a materials defect issue is if I brought an actual steering wheel that has the existing problem. So this is what my steering wheel would look like. You can see it's just got this awful material here. This stuff is like razor thin. It's barely holding on for dear life. And there's like this weird padding stuff underneath it. And so it was my hope that I could show the judge this steering wheel and say, hey, do you think this is adequate for a steering wheel? Do you think this is going to last any substantial amount of time? And if Tesla puts a new one of these with this material on my car, do you think it's going to last any longer than the first one? And so I carried this steering wheel through the subway, all the way through New York. And when I showed up to the courthouse, I had to actually submit it as like evidence or whatever to the security guards. I'm not allowed to bring it upstairs, but at the point that I get called to see the judge, I could say, hey, I've got evidence. Can you please go get it? So the time that I was supposed to be there was about 6 o'clock. We got there about 5:15 and I came with my friend. You're allowed to bring people. So my friend and I walk in, we wait for about 45 minutes. Eventually some cops come, they unlock the door and we enter the courtroom. Now the courtroom in New York City was quite a bit smaller than I imagined. I would say it's maybe the size of like a medium church, and they actually had like pews on both sides. It wasn't really like what you would see on TV. Like I feel like on TV, it's a little bit darker. It's a little bit, you've got like two separate sections for like the plaintiff and the defendant. But in this room, it was just church pews and there was just a guy in like a button-up shirt, not even like not a suit or anything. And so it was this guy's job to just kind of keep everybody in order, make sure that the court is flowing smoothly. And so one of the first things he did was give instructions for how to answer what they call the calendar call. So basically, he's going to call your name and you can respond with one of four things. You can say you're ready, which means that you're willing to be seen by either a judge or an arbitrator. Or you can say by the court which means you're only willing to be seen by a judge, but the judge might not have enough time to see everybody. You might have to reschedule if there's not enough time. You can say application, which means that you want to change something about your court filing, like maybe how much you're asking for, you want to postpone or reschedule, or you could say nothing at all. And there were surprisingly a lot of no-shows. So either the plaintiff showed up without a defendant, in which case the plaintiff would actually have to appear in front of the judge, kind of make their case, but there's nobody to defend them, or the defendant could show up without the plaintiff, in which case the defendant is free to go and the case is dismissed. Now, an arbitrator is not actually a judge, but if both you and the defendant are willing to sign off on this, then you're saying that you're willing to have the arbitrator's decision be final. Now, I wanted to be seen that day. I wasn't interested in driving all the way back to New York City. And so, of course, my response was going to be ready. And so when he called my name, I said, Adam Davenport, ready. And then he said, Tesla. And some guy was standing there. He was all dressed in black. He looked very sharp. And he said, Tesla, ready. And so now both of us have acknowledged that we're there, and the court can decide at what point we're going to move to another room in order to be seen by the arbitrator. Now, we might be seen by a judge if the judge has time. Really, it's just about who's available and when. At the time, they had one arbitrator who was volunteering to be there. I guess that's how they build experience or something. About an hour goes by. We got there at 6, maybe it was like 7 or 7:15 or something. Finally, they said, Adam Davenport, Tesla, can you please move to room whatever it was? So we go up to this next room, and this room is much, much smaller. I would say there's maybe like 4 church pews now at this point, and there's one lady in the front of the room just sitting at like this very small table. Like they had like an upper section where like a judge might normally sit, but this lady seemed to want to be a little bit closer to the people that were talking. And so we sat down, and the arbitrator calls up one of the first cases. And this case was about a guy who owned a unit in a building in New York City, and he got a cable bill that he didn't expect to get. And so the building was there representing themselves because they'd been billing this guy for cable this entire time. And the guy was there representing himself saying, hey, I'm paying both you and the cable company. I'm paying twice. Why am I paying you? I've opted out from all of your stuff. And the building was like, yeah, you opted out, but at the same time, you're getting all these premium channels, and those premium channels aren't included in our package. And so there was a bunch of back and forth. They talked for almost an hour about what appeared to just be a misunderstanding of his cable bill. He was paying basic cable through the building, and he was paying the cable company for premium channels and didn't realize that he's getting 2 bills. And 8:30 rolls around, and that's when the court closes. And so they left, and she says, Adam Davenport, Tesla. And we stand up. And then one of the security guards is like, oh no, we got to cut it off. We got to cut it off. And she's like, oh, but they're here. Like, let's just get it done. And he's like, no, we got to close the building. And I was like, 10 minutes, give us 10 minutes. She's like, Tesla, can you do it in 10 minutes? He's like, yeah, we can do it in 10 minutes. I'm like, great. She's like, all right, get started. So I started to say my thing, and the security guard cut us off. He's like, nope, we can't do it. We can't do it. We got to shut it down. And they gave me a postponement, and I had another 3 months before I would have to drive back to New York City to be seen again. And so we left. We got some pizza while we were in New York City, got back in the subway, and I drove 6 hours all the way back home with nothing but a little yellow piece of paper with a new court date. Now, it's super frustrating. I really didn't want to waste 12 hours of driving, plus all this extra time waiting in court, walking around New York City, subway tickets, parking tickets. And so I waited a few months and did it all over again. I drove another 6 hours back to New York City. This time I didn't pay for a subway ticket. I ended up driving closer to the courthouse. I think I paid something like $40 for parking, and I waited around again for a second court appearance. It was the same thing, same room, same guy, He said, Adam Davenport. I said, Adam Davenport, ready. Again, totally willing to be seen by an arbitrator. I really don't want to have to come down a third time. And then he said, Tesla, and nothing. He said, Tesla? Tesla did not show up. And so at this point, I ended up having to wait for an hour because I had to show up at 6 for the calendar call, but apparently they give Tesla another hour and do a second calendar call at 7. And so 7 o'clock rolls around, they say Adam Davenport ready, they say Tesla, and again, crickets. And so at this point, if I can be seen by somebody, it becomes what they call an inquest, which means that I present my case to the arbitrator or the judge. Tesla's not there to defend themselves, and the arbitrator or the judge can make a decision. And so eventually they call my name. I move up to the exact same room I was in before. And this time there's a different lady. Now this lady was way, way more efficient than the first one. And she was just flying through these cases. I'd say they'd maybe had like 5 or 10 minutes apiece. And so finally she calls my name. Now, I'm pretty nervous at this point, and honestly, I forgot to ask for my steering wheel as evidence. I just walked up and started into this speech that I'd practiced. So I'd made a copy of this 3 times. I had one for me, one for the judge, and one for Tesla to reference. And I just jumped right in. And I'll try to recreate my speech as best I can here. Purchased the car in 2021. About 2.5 years after I got the car, I noticed a 3-inch bubble on my steering wheel. And so I reached out to Tesla. I said, hey, can you fix this? They said that this was normal wear and tear and refused to fix it. So I went to the warranty documentation. I saw that I could go to arbitration. I went through arbitration, and a panel of 3 judges, after seeing not 1, but 2 service bulletins where Tesla acknowledges the issue, the panel of 3 judges said that I'd failed to produce evidence of a manufacturing defect. And so then I filed a small claims court to be seen here today. And when Tesla got notice, when the Tesla got a date to appear, they called me and they said, hey, can you send us some pictures? I sent in the exact same 2 pictures. And they said, oh, we're sorry, Mr. Davenport. We should have taken care of this. Come on in. We'll get it taken care of. And as soon as I got to that part in the story, she cut me off. And she said, where in here does it say that they offered to replace the steering wheel? And I'm like, crap. All right, well, that's on page 10. So she opens up page 10. She looks through it. She starts to read it. She says, give me a second. Let me read this. She reads through the conversation with Tesla. And then she says, okay, I've got what I need to make a decision. Oh. So just because Tesla offered to replace my steering wheel, it sounds like she wasn't interested in hearing any more of the story. And so there's this tiny little envelope in front of me. She asked me to put in my name and address just so that she can mail my decision to me. And while I'm filling this out, I asked her, I said, hey, can I say just one more thing? And she's like, okay, fine, what? And I'm like, I don't have any confidence that if they replace my steering wheel, that it's gonna last any longer than the first one. I've got like 40 pictures here of other steering wheels that are falling apart, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, thank you, I've got what I need to make a decision. Now, the interesting part is, before I left, she said, okay, you're asking for the $919.30, what's this $15? And I said, oh, that's the court filing fee. And she says, do you have a receipt for that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's on page 13. So she opens up page 13 and she looks at it, she says, okay, I got it. And so now I'm confused, because on one hand she said, hey, they offered to replace your steering wheel, I've got what I need to make a decision. But on the other hand, she wanted to see a receipt for the $15 court filing fee, which would be irrelevant if she was going to side with them, right? And so I waited a couple weeks and finally got my letter in the mail. And let's jump to my actual first reaction opening the letter. So I got the response from the judge. I'm gonna open this up and we're gonna see what it says. Report of arbitrator, referee. After inquest is circled, I, the undersigned arbitrator, referee, designated by the court, blah, 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 claimant, exhibits, photos, Claimant proved prima facie case in the amount of $949 with interest. $934.34 is granted to claimant due to damage of steering wheel of Tesla car, and $15 is also grant back to claimant for court filing fee. Everything is signed. I, judgment in favor of claimant in the amount of $934.30 with interest and disbursements to be taxed by clerk. Wow. All right. So now we wait for Tesla. So it sounds like we won. We've got a judgment from New York City, not just for the price of the steering wheel, not the $15 court filing fee, but she also even awarded me interest, which is kind of wild. So we kind of played a little bit of a reverse card for any Uno fans out there, because originally Tesla was charging us $919.30. And in the end, we ended up making them pay us $919.30 plus some other fees. Now, this isn't quite the win that you might think it is, because at this point now, all I have is a judgment. I didn't get a check from Tesla. I just have a letter from the court saying that Tesla owes me money. And that's kind of where it ended for a bit, because I waited about a month and nothing happened. And so I ended up emailing resolutions@tesla.com, which is Tesla's legal email address, and only got an automated reply. And I waited another 3 weeks or so and still nothing. And so at this point, I went back to the library, I got my book, and the book said that I have a few options. I can garnish their wages, but this isn't a person, so I don't know how to garnish Tesla's wages. I can put a lien on their property, like if they were ever gonna sell like a service center or something, maybe I could put a lien in the deed, I don't know. Or I can go to their bank with a judgment letter from the court and get money out of their bank account. But I have no idea who they bank with. So now I'm kind of stuck. But luckily, 3.5 weeks after I emailed them the judgment, I finally got my check. Now this is a little bit bittersweet for me, because at the end of the day, I ended up taking time off of work. I had 24 hours of driving to New York City and back twice. I have parking fees, I've got subway fees. All of the time that was invested in this is just not really worth it for what I got out of it. Now, if I could do it again, I would absolutely ask for more money in my initial filing, because I guess the judge is allowed to award less than what I asked for, but they're not allowed to award more. So in the future, I would probably estimate how much time I'm gonna spend doing this. I would consider that I might need to go to court twice. I would try to estimate parking fees and tolls, and then collect receipts during my travels and try to present that to the judge to at least give them the option to consider it. Now, again, this is another thing that if you have any experience with this in court, please leave a comment to help out the next guy. And if you're considering going to court, go down to the comments and I'll see if other people have left any tips or tricks for you. I'm hoping this video can be like kind of a library of information for anybody that's dealing with warranty disputes against any company, not just car companies, but any company at all. Now, a lot of you might think that going through all of this was kind of petty, and I actually agree. This was a very petty claim, which is precisely what small claims court is meant for. If I'm being honest, part of what motivated me to go through all of this is looking online and seeing how many other people had similar stories where they had a steering wheel that was starting to fall apart and Tesla rejected their warranty claim. Now, some of them even alleged that their service center told them that it wasn't their decision and that it was Tesla corporate that was instructing the service centers not to cover these steering wheels anymore. Now, in that case, what would the consequences be for not covering legitimate claims? Now, I mentioned Louis Rossmann before. He's another YouTuber, and his entire shtick is talking about companies screwing over their customers. And a constant theme in his videos is that if we let companies continue to do this without consequence, then they're going to continue doing that. At the end of the day, you paid for a warranty and you paid for a car with a steering wheel. And if they're not going to give you that, then it's up to you to insist. Now, there's one more thing that I was reading about online that I thought was a little bit ridiculous, but also interesting. So I heard that people were being told by the service center that the reason their steering wheels were falling apart is because they used lotion or hand sanitizer. Now, of course, this is a terrible excuse. Like, obviously, you need to design a steering wheel to be held by hands, which might have hand products on them. But I wanted to be thorough and actually test if those theories are true. And so I got on eBay. You've already seen the steering wheel, and I'm going to be doing a part 2 video where I'm going to actually be repairing some of these. I'm going to reupholster it with real leather. Obviously, this video is long enough, and so I'm going to be doing a part 2, but you can see that I've sectioned off this steering wheel. So I'm going to apply a bunch of lotion to this section. Over here, I'm going to be putting some nail polish remover. Over here, I'm going to be putting petroleum jelly, which is one of the main ingredients in most lotions. And then I've got hand sanitizer that I'm going to put up here. And I'm just going to apply these as liberally as I can. We're going to test this after a few weeks, and we're going to see what kind of an effect these chemicals have on the steering wheel. Now, I think at this point, most YouTubers would be begging for likes and subscriptions, but honestly, if you've watched this far into the video, YouTube is gonna show you more of my videos whether you subscribe or not. So keep an eye out for that next video. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Leave any comments about any experiences that you've been through that are similar. And I hope you found this helpful.